1 second. Okay, recording has started. Christina, you're more than welcome to call the meeting to order.
Thank you. All right, let's call this meeting to order. We will start with call to order roll call. Vice Chair Gail Jackson. Vice Chair Gail Jackson. Commissioner Jesse Breckenridge.
Present.
Commissioner Carol Curtis. Commissioner Carol Curtis, I think you're muted.
And Chair Caldwell, Vice Chair Jackson just joined us.
Wonderful.
Commissioner Caldwell, this is Carol Curtis here.
Thank you. Commissioner Cal McCloy.
Present. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Thank you. Commissioner David Steiner.
He will not be able to join us today.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Thomas Waddell.
Here.
Thank you, sir. City staff. Council member Deb Harris. Council member Deb Harris. Economic Vitality Director Heidi Hansen. Economic Vitality Director Heidi Hansen. Airport Director Brian Gall.
Present.
Thank you, sir. Airport Communications Manager Claire Harper.
Present.
ARFF Ops Manager Tim Skinner.
Present.
Thank you, sir. Recording Secretary Missiela Sanner.
Present.
Thank you. All right, let's move right along to preliminary general business, public comment, participation, input. Items presented during the public participation input portion of the agenda cannot be acted upon by the commission. Individual members of the commission may ask questions of the public, but are prohibited by the open meeting law from discussion or consideration or considering the item among themselves until the item has been officially placed on the agenda. At this time, are there any public comment, participation, or input? Is there? All right, hearing none. Let's move on to announcements, reconsiderations, changes to the agenda, and other preliminary announcements. Okay, hearing none. Let's move on to the approval of minutes. The regular meeting of June 8th, 2023. Is there any discussion, or do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved. Cal McCloy.
Thank you, sir. Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
And that was Commissioner Breckenridge.
Thank you. All those in favor, please unmute and say aye.
Aye.
Unmute and say aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Let's move on to City Council updates. Do we have Council Member Deb Harris? Has she joined?
She has not joined.
Have we heard any? Is there a reason she's not with us today?
She certainly sent the invite to herself and her staff. So I'm not sure if she has a conflict, but we will continue to send the invitation to her.
Okay, I know that last time she was unavailable because there was a conflict. Could we follow up and maybe, just I think it's important that we do have city council updates, and I know that schedules don't always work out, but, if we could maybe after the meeting or, sometime soon, if we could just reach out and see maybe ask very nicely if Councilmember Harris is not available, that maybe she could send an update that could be read. I think that would be helpful.
Certainly, and council is on their break for the summer. So perhaps she's enjoying some time away, but we will certainly
Yeah.
follow up and send her an email along with her chief of staff and the council staff to let her know that we're certainly interested. In having her.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And a very, very well-deserved break. So thank you for that. Moving on to staff reports, Director Brian Gall.
Good morning, Chair Caldwell. Missy, can we go to the employment slide, please? So for this year's employments, you can see we're still tracking lower than we have been in our previous years prior to 2019. That's largely due to the reduced flight schedules that we're seeing. We've had those conversations with American Airlines. Right now they're sitting at their kind of minimum level that they provided lately, which is 4 flights per day. So we're seeing 3 Phoenix flights and 1 Dallas flight. They are pretty well attended. I think their employment numbers are good for each flight, but we have seen a little bit of a challenge in them getting more crews to staff more aircraft than that. I believe at the peak of the pilot shortage, American Airlines had 150 regional aircraft parked. I think that number is maybe down to 120 at this point. But yeah, we still see a lack of regional aircraft and the crews to fly them available right now. So we've heard some rumors that might be changing later this fall, but nothing firm. So we're hopeful that we'll see some more flights on their flight schedules as the year progresses. We did meet with American Airlines at the Jumpstart conference last month, which I think Claire will give a little bit of an update on today. But they did mention that they were happy with their current service and didn't really have any plans at this time to reduce it any further. But yeah, at this point, the pilot shortage is what is impacting those employment numbers as much as anything else. And in terms of operations, unfortunately for this month, our current tower manager has moved on to a different position within the company that he worked at out of state. And they have not found a replacement for him yet. So I reached out to their staff to try to get some operations numbers, but have not yet received those. So we're have not received June's operations numbers. We'll follow up and hopefully have those to do a future one. And hopefully they get that position filled soon. We certainly value our partners over at the tower and like to see them at full staffing. So they're not having to work any extra hours. Any questions on our operations or employments for June? Great, then that's all I have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Fixed base operator report, Wiseman Aviation.
So Orville did let us know yesterday that he is taking advantage of some of the time for the runway closure and doing some work on his building. So he will not be able to join us today. So we can see that their fuel flow was pretty steady compared to May. And it looks like that was the highest that it's been this year.
I can give a little bit of an update on that from a meeting we had with Orville earlier this week as well, if you'd like.
Yeah, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure. So you notice that though our employments were tracking down a little bit from the previous month, our fuel flow is going the opposite direction. And the big reason for that is we've seen an increase in the number of larger corporate aircraft that are flying in, those large corporate jets. That has been very steady this year and very busy this summer. As people come in for a variety of factors, people who have second homes here, people conducting business. Also, with our extra runway length, we can accommodate some private aircraft for people that are going to Sedona, but that exceed that airport's capability to handle those bigger planes. So we're just seeing a really sharp increase in the amount of corporate traffic we're getting this year, and that's what's keeping those fuel flow numbers high, even as the employments drop down a bit.
That's great. Thank you.
I have a question. I want to ask how we can better connect with these corporate companies that are coming through. Like, are there advertising opportunities within Orville's location, or how can we find out who are these people that are coming in?
Yeah, so part of that, there's not a way that the airport itself can know who any of these people are. Some of that's by design. Largely, they don't want us to know who they are.
I'm sure they don't.
So we're not really in the loop to find out. Wiseman Aviation does a pretty good job of keeping their clients' confidentiality in place.
Mhm.
I think Wiseman would be the group to talk to about any opportunities for things like that. Advertising within their space would be under, since they have a ground lease with the airport, they kind of have the purview to do what they would like within their open space. So we can initiate those conversations or put people in touch with Wiseman Aviation. But ultimately, that's a decision for Wiseman on what they want to do in terms of advertising and outreach to their customers in their facility.
Do you know if Wiseman gives them any sort of welcome packets whenever he has people coming in?
I don't
To
know.
say like a visitor guide and like business opportunity, investment opportunities?
So I've been able to spend some time over there helping out, and just we'll touch on something. They were able to host the National Association of Counties, some congressional delegation, June 20th. So a lot of it is, they have, so it's a charter pilot that comes in. A lot of them don't even go into their building. They'll have a vehicle outside that will be waiting to then take them out. We can certainly, have you been to Wiseman Aviation?
We've talked a lot about a tour and it hasn't happened yet. So.
We've been running around like crazy, and with the
Yeah.
weather, we can certainly try to make that happen. But I see your idea. I don't see a huge way to advertise without being too kind of pushy in your face. I think they could certainly have like the information available, but most of their clientele, from what I've seen, it's like they know exactly what they're doing. They're going to their Forest Highlands house, they're going down to Sedona to golf.
Sure.
And it's usually the people that are like hanging out are the people that are waiting, like a rental car agency or a driver to pick them up, or the people that like hang around in there. Like lately, it's been like people that are doing geographic studies and wildland firefighters and things like that are just waiting for the rest of their crews to go up. But I would say the higher level, like if you're not getting a rental car for Wiseman or picking something like up, they don't really go through the building. They have a vehicle waiting to pick them up and exit out the gates. So I think that's certainly a conversation that could be had with Orville, but I'm not, that would be a conversation with Orville.
Have you guys, I know he was talking about, he's got the contract for the military fuel again. Have we seen any increase in that recently, or?
So the military fueling contract went active as of July 1st.
Oh,
From what
okay.
we've heard from Wiseman is that it takes a little while for, even though the contract is signed, for those updated list of facilities to make it down to all the branches of the military and the particular air crews that are flying. So I wouldn't say that we've seen a huge increase in military traffic, especially with our runway closure this week, because I think it is going to take a little bit of time for word to get out.
Right.
But Orville is expecting some increased traffic related to that in the future.
Cool.
Great questions. I have a question for you, Gail. Is there any representation within Econa with regard to the airport or any type of travel, or is it just through the city, the tourism division?
Yes. We have a broad membership.
Yeah, I just wasn't. I wasn't sure if you had representation from the airport.
Or
Or
Heidi Hansen is a part of it.
That's what I. That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for the fixed-based operator report before we move on? Good question. All right. Then let's move on to the project and grant update from Director Brian Gall.
Thank you, Chair Caldwell. So this has been a really busy month, or a couple months for us, but this week in particular has been a lot of updates on the project front. So work in progress. The the two big ones under, or the one big one under CARES is the terminal maintenance phase 1. So we try to take advantage of the runway being closed and the fact that TSA and American Airlines did not need to have as many staff in the building. So we're currently doing work in both of their offices. This week, we've done a number of drywall repairs inside the American Airlines office. We've moved a door that was not in an ideal location for them and removed a baggage belt that was part of a legacy system that hasn't been in operation since the TSA came into effect. Back when this terminal was built, bags didn't go through a screening process. The airlines were responsible for handling them, and that system still existed within their space and just took up a lot of space and was kind of right in the middle of their office. So we managed to remove that and went out today. The painting is mostly complete. They're scheduled for carpet repairs, though we're still waiting on the carpet to arrive, so that should be here within the coming weeks. They've also started working on exterior painting for the building. So they pressure washed the building today. They're prepping it with hopes that paint is going to start either later this afternoon or tomorrow, if not. So that's going to involve sanding and resealing the beams on the exteriors, painting the exposed metal, and painting the stucco plus stucco repairs on the exterior. So all that work is going on right now as we speak. Next slide, please. So a reminder, this is out of that CARES grant budget. So we do have a number of other projects that are on deck right now. Terminal fire sprinkler construction, terminal maintenance phase 2, airfield maintenance phases 3 and 4. We're going to do a project to upgrade and repair our perimeter fence, as well as the terminal lot and the rental car employee lot and the fire station. So those are the projects we currently have on deck. Right now, it's been a little bit challenging getting those started, pending our current staffing levels. We are working on filling the programs manager position. I think once that happens, we'll start to see these projects move forward quite quickly. Next slide, please.
That one question, that terminal lot rehabilitation, is that to repave and stripe the lot out there?
Yeah, so the terminal lot is the closest lot to the building, the lot right in front of the terminal here. It's the original lot. It was built in 1993 and expanded once in 1997. That parking lot has never been repaved to my knowledge. Looking at it, it looks like it's had one chip seal over it at some point. Yeah. I think part of the challenge was that it was always full, and it's really hard when the facility is open 365 days a year to move out that many cars to do maintenance. So we've got some parking updates coming up, and I'll give a little bit more information on that. Okay. But this parking project that we have going on separately has allowed us finally to have the feasibility to move some vehicles. So this is going to be a full repave of the original front half of that lot. We're seeing where the scope falls for the back half. Back half's a little bit newer and not in as bad a shape, but that front portion of the terminal lot will be repaved, restriped. Plus, we're going to be making some changes to it to better accommodate our snow removal. So adding in some roll curves instead of vertical curves so that they can just push snow straight off into landscape areas instead of pushing it into a curve and breaking the curve. Plus placing some bollards so we can block off spaces in the wintertime so that they have a place to push snow instead of a vehicle being in the way. Hopefully it'll make our wintertime operations much more efficient.
Yeah, it looks a lot better when there's a lot of cars out there. When I drove in the dam, and
yeah,
kinda,
when you can
Just a
see
little street sweeping, we were out there.
when you can see the pavement, you start to notice how bad it looks. Yeah.
And for old guys like me, not having those bright white stripes makes it a lot harder to park.
That's on our list right now. That construction is scheduled for September.
Okay, cool.
Next slide, please. So for FAA funded projects, the big one, of course, is the snow removal equipment building. Not much of an update from last month. We did get the cultural study submitted, as well as our approval for construction manager at risk, which is an alternative delivery method, where we pick a contractor based on qualifications rather than just based on low bid price. So right now, our procurement staff and our public works staff who are working on this project are assembling the request for proposals for that. So that's the next step in that process, is to get that construction manager at risk selected. Next slide, please. So here's a big one for this month. Airport funded project update is the paid parking system. So very happy to announce that we closed the gates on the system for the first time yesterday. The final item that was keeping us from doing that was the intercom system. It wasn't working reliably, so we got that sorted out. We still have a few bugs to work in it in terms of audio quality and an occasional dropped call, but the system is operational. The gates were brought down. Parking is still free and will remain free through the weekend. This was good timing for it with our runway closure, where we're not seeing an extensive amount of traffic, and it tends to be a little bit more spread out with our rental car customers. And we did develop some talking points as well as a copy of the attached map. It's probably a little hard to read on your screens here, but it shows the location of both the terminal parking lot and the economy parking lot, plus that lower right kind of orange color is for our new employee parking. That was previously our overflow lot, but now is designated for employees and rental cars. The existing vehicles, as you mentioned, the existing vehicles that were in the lot are about the lowest number we've seen here in probably a decade, I would guess. We're down to about 150 vehicles in the lot. I think there's a mix of items that are affecting that. Big one is the runway closure. So not having any flights this week, a lot of people left and we didn't get cars to replace them since we didn't have flights going out. So that was a big step in it. It actually made this timing work quite well. Another is the low number of flights we talked about with American Airlines down to those 4 flights a day. So I expect as their flight numbers start to increase, we'll see that parking pick back up as well. And then potentially finding out that maybe some people were storing cars out here, which was our thought all along. So we'll see how many of those come back once the system's in place.
Yeah.
So for those vehicles that were in the lot when the gate system came down, we placed a little baggie with instructions and an exit ticket underneath all of their windshield wipers on the driver's side. It's a bright neon orange ticket with some instructions on how they exit. So far that's been well received. We've seen a number of cars use that system on the way out. Of course, each entering vehicle now will have to grab a ticket on their way in, so they won't need any kind of special instructions, but that has been provided to the cars that were already in the lot. So for remaining items on the paid parking system, I talked about equipment adjustments. That's things like making sure that our lighting system and the license plate reader cameras are capturing as many vehicles as they can be. We're also going to be posting some stickers with instructions on them on the equipment, so it's a little bit more clear than just the video that plays on it. We'll have some labels on the equipment for what each button does. And then we're going to film a demonstration video of someone going through an entry and exit system to illustrate how the lot can be used. And we'll share that both on our social media channels and on our airport website so that folks can have a good idea if they're coming to the airport what the system looks like before they even get here. Next slide, please.
So before you move on, Brian,
Sorry, what's that?
so I love the idea of a demonstration video for social media and the website. I think that's a nice touch. Could you remind us again what the parking fees were?
Sure. So the parking fees for the terminal lot are $8 a day. Well, first, I guess I'll start with the hourly fee. So the first hour is free, and then it's $2 a day?
And we didn't put that on the signage. I couldn't find, we'll talk.
I believe it's $2 per hour up to the daily rate, which is $8 an hour. Or sorry, $8 a day. And the weekly rate is the equivalent of 6 days. So $48 for the weekly rate for the terminal lot. The rates are similar for the economy lot, but it's $6 per day and $36 a week for the economy lot.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you for that. And then the EV charging stations, those were 4 spaces?
There are 5 spaces in the EV charging.
All right, thank you for that.
And on the next slide, we added just a few pictures from some updates. The system hasn't changed a whole lot since the last ones we shared, except for the gates being down. So those were taken as of this morning, so you can see the parking gates when they're in operation. I have to say they look really cool at night. They have an LED light bar that goes across the bottom of the gates. It's red when the gates are down and green when they are fully raised, so you know it's safe to drive through. And they're visible from quite a ways, but they are partially shielded because of that bar, and they do point straight down, so they shouldn't have an effect on our dark sky compliance. Next slide, please.
Do you know how it works relative to a sensor of it closing? Does it wait for, does it have like a optical sensor, or is it in the?
There's no optical sensor, there's a magnetic loop.
The loop.
So when you on the exit lanes, for example, when you push your ticket back into the machine and it detects that you paid and it opens up the gate arm won't come down until it detects a vehicle on the magnetic loop, showing that the vehicle has pulled forward and then has left that loop. So it won't. There's no timeout as long as you're still parked at the system and you haven't crossed the loop. The gate will stay open, and then it will come back down as soon as it detects that you've gone through. So here's a similar picture to the economy lot, which you'll notice a truck in the background. That was, I believe, our third customer parking in the economy lot since the gates came down. We did have a few folks sneak in there off and on as we were doing work. People seem to like to drive around those barricades and park in that lot anyway. But there was nobody in there when we implemented the system, so now we're up to, I believe, 4 vehicles in that lot. So pretty excited there. And then you can see we added some signage to our employee parking lot. Previously, that fence said overflow parking. We had some signage that directed people to that lot in case the terminal lot was full. We've taken down all that signage and added this authorized vehicle sign and a reminder that parking is by permit only for that employee area. Next slide, please. Our other big effort for this week is our runway closure, which is an ADOT funded project as part of the airport pavement management systems. So under this program, ADOT funds 90% of the construction with a 10% city match, and ADOT funds 100% of the design efforts for it. So it's a really good deal and a good way to get a lot of our pavement maintained. This project generally involves things like a seal coat rather than a full repaving. So in this case, this included a seal coat and new pavement markings on our runway 321, on our parallel taxiway, taxiway A from Alpha 2 to Alpha 9, and on taxiways Alpha 2 to Alpha 9, plus portions of the Westplex, which are that private hangar area. So that's pictured in the bottom of the slide here. So the taxiway work is all complete, including the final striping. The runway work is ongoing this week. That's what our runway shutdown has been for. So they're scheduled to finish their seal coating operations today. Since it's a runway, there are pretty strict friction testing requirements from the Federal Aviation Administration. So they have to bring out some special equipment that makes sure that the friction on the runway is sufficient enough to stop heavy aircraft in wet conditions. So friction testing is scheduled for tomorrow. The striping on the runway will be done tomorrow and possibly into Saturday. Once that's complete, we'll be able to reopen the runway. Now, that is a temporary striping. When the material is fresh, you put down a light coat of paint so that the markings are visible, but that it still allows the new seal coat to cure. So in about 2 weeks from now, they will come back overnight, probably 2 to 3 nights in a row, to complete that final striping over top of the temporary striping, and then the project will be complete. But so far, everything is looking to be on schedule, and as much as we need the rain, I'm hoping that it holds off for maybe another day and a half or so we can get this all buttoned up and back open again.
Do you know the last time that it was actually torn up and replaced?
And so the airport hasn't had a full reconstruction in a very long time, but we've had a lot of maintenance projects. So the last major rehabilitation we had was in 2017. At that time, we did, depending on the portion of the runway, about a 2.5 to 3 inch mill and replaced with new asphalt. So that the asphalt we have out there is about 6 years old at this point for the surface course. So I mentioned that runway project was part of the ADOT APMS program. So you can see here, this is a link and a picture of what the APMS web application looks like. So every 3 years, ADOT funds a pavement analyst company to come out and take a look at the pavements of every airport within the state. So that company does a survey, a sample of sections of pavement that were built at different times, and then gives it a score called a PCI, a pavement condition index. So green is the color you want. That's for higher PCIs, for pavement that's in better shape. Yellow is kind of medium, and then the color gets darker into red shades when your pavement is in kind of rough shape. So you can see from this, Flagstaff Airport has a lot of green and yellow, so that's good. Obviously, pavement has a service life. We try to make sure it lasts at least 20 years. That's the goal for FAA-funded projects. They typically won't fund work on a similar project within a 20-year span of the original construction. So that puts it back on airports to make sure they're doing work like this seal coat to extend the service life of your pavements. So this gets updated, as I said, every 3 years, and programs like this help keep those numbers good for a longer period of time. Missy, I think we can go to the next slide, but I think that was it for the project updates. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Brian, I do have a remedial question for you. So for parking, besides collecting the number of cars being parked and the length of time, is there any other type of data that's being collected with regard to parking?
Not very much. So the system does have a license plate reader, but really that's intended as a replacement for the ticket system itself. So if you happen to lose your ticket, but you parked in the license plate reader successfully captured your license plate on arrival, you can use that upon your exit to pay for your fee without having to go through the hassle of a lost ticket. So that information is out there, but it's not really out there in a format that's very usable other than that ticket replacement. So most of the data we're getting, like you mentioned, is that number of vehicles parked and duration of parking.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any other questions for Director Gall before we move on?
Oh, Chair Caldwell, can I add one more thing on that?
Yes, absolutely.
The other thing that is collected is we will know the number of people who use each piece of equipment. So we'll be able to tell which lanes within the lot are more popular than other lanes might be. So not just which lot they're parking, but also which entry and exit they're using to get there, plus how many people are, say, using to pay on the foot station in the terminal versus paying at the gate when they exit. So there are some other user numbers that we're tracking that can hopefully help us make adjustments for things like signage and wayfinding if we want to steer people towards other parts of the lot to maybe reduce congestion.
Right, thank you. Okay, hearing no other questions, let's move on to the communications and business updates. Claire Harper.
Thanks, Chair Caldwell. So we will do a little recap on our Jumpstart conference. We were able to attend, sorry, I thought that was me, in Milwaukee, and Brian went, as well as Trace Ward, who is our Conventions and Visitors Bureau Director. He was able to tie in the tourism piece. We were able to meet with Allegiant, Southwest, and American, and it is like your meet your match. So we requested 12, and these are the ones that wanted to meet with us. We were quite impressed with the interest of all the meetings we had. Everyone was Arizona-based and certainly knew about Flagstaff in our market. We met with the VP of Allegiant and then one of their route planners. They let us know that they are growing this year at 1.5%. So not a lot, but to continue having the conversations in the future. And certainly they are into serving underserved markets. So certainly that could be a fit in the future, and we'll continue those conversations. We met with Southwest, good conversation. What they say is that they fly 737s, and that's their business model, so pilots can fly all planes. And our hold room with the capacity of a 737 and a regional flight would be pretty tight, but they did let us know to continue the conversations with them in the future, which we will do. American, good conversation. They're very happy with the Phoenix and Dallas-Fort Worth route. They don't have, certainly we shared with them that we would like more service to Dallas-Fort Worth or a larger plane. They shared with us that, again, the regional pilot shortage, they just do not have people to fly the planes. Anything else on Jumpstart, Brian?
Yeah, American we did bring up the discussion of potentially other routes in addition to the Phoenix and Dallas-Fort Worth. At this point, is kind of the same answer in regard to that regional market and availability of aircraft and pilots. They weren't really looking to those kind of expansions. Yeah, otherwise I think you covered it quite well. One thing to recall about Allegiant is that they did talk a little bit about their business model. They are really focused on the leisure traveler, so that'd be less than daily service, most likely. We did talk to all three of these companies about our application for a small community air service development grant. Those grants generally can come in the form of either revenue guarantees, so you guarantee that for the first several years of a new route's operation, it will make a certain amount of money, or you can use them for things like advertising support, so destination marketing at both ends of the flight, so in the origin city and the destination city. All three of the airlines we met with were pretty adamant that they really liked the marketing support. They thought that was a way to better sustain a route in the long term versus just guaranteeing revenue for a couple of years. So that was good for us to know. If we aren't successful in the grant application this year, that will give us more detail to include in our application for next year.
And a lot of talk incentive-wise. Incentives are appealing, but what I pulled away and someone said directly where it's like, we want the seats filled and we want it to be a successful route. So we can throw money at them and welcome them in with some incentives, but they want it to be something that they can stay in and be a sustainable market. And we've we're working on our passenger demand analysis. We're in contract with Mead and Hunt on that, so that will certainly give us some stronger data that we'll be able to present to the airlines. But regional routes are not growing at this moment, so we'll keep building those relationships and keep trying.
One more thing,
Go ahead.
I'll say one more thing on that is that I mentioned the terminal maintenance project. We're updating our American Airlines office and TSA office. We're also updating to the basically the exact same specs the Bacon Airline office. So whenever somebody is ready to start looking at this space, their office will be nice and fresh and redone or remodeled just like the other spaces at the airport.
Just a question, I don't know if this came up, but I'm not aware that Allegiant flies any regional jets. Don't they just use the?
They fly mostly Airbus series. They do have a large order of 737s coming in too, but their primary target for this route would be something like an A319, which in their configuration is 153 seats, which is doable in our whole room, though challenging. Southwest, they fly a series of 4 different 737s, the 737-700, 800, MAX 7, and MAX 8. The issue with those is they vary from about 144 seats up to about 185 seats. And they can't tell you which one will be on your route on any given day because they are totally interchangeable in their market plan. So the 185 seat 737 would be really challenging to maybe near impossible for our current whole room configuration. The smaller ones could work. So since Allegiant do put specific aircraft on routes, their smaller size planes could work for Flagstaff, whereas Southwest couldn't really guarantee that they would give us a size plane that would work with our infrastructure.
And it's interesting, I noticed that I mentioned earlier, we fly Allegiant a lot up to Montana, and they drop Great Falls for the summer because they moved to flying in the Kalispell to cover Glacier Park flights, you know, and then when that dies off, they bring back to Great Falls. So, you know, it's just something kind of unusual, particularly for airport management, I think.
Challenging,
yeah. You know,
sure.
You lose all those flights for 3.5 months and then, oh, we're coming back. Okay, good.
It's also challenging from a space standpoint. Right now, we have 2 spaces in our terminal building for different airlines. So, you know, if you have one that's operating seasonally, it takes up the place that a potential future full-time airline could operate.
Yeah.
So that's why we're having these negotiations with all these and looking at what kind of service they can offer us. Unfortunately, like Claire mentioned, right now, just staffing availability has made it, I think, a little bit on the horizon before we expect to realistically see anybody think about coming here. But we're starting those conversations and we're laying the groundwork that will be first on their list when they're ready to start adding routes.
You know, I was talking to a friend of mine too that most of the airlines have started some really great incentive programs to build their pilot corps. He retired from the Air Force, and wasn't considering flying regional until they said, okay, we'll pay for your ATP and we're gonna, you know, your type rating, you know, everything that used to have to come out of your pocket, the airline's picking up, and then I think that $20,000 signing bonus kind of helped too, you know.
From a financial standpoint, there's never been a better time to become a pilot. So if anybody you know is coming out of high school or college and looking for a career path, now's a really good time to get in while the industry is growing a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I have a question regarding the pilot school. Like, so we have 2 other regional airports, right, that are operating, Winslow and Sedona. Has there been any discussion with our regional partners about doing any sort of training? I mean, I know Mesa, I think it's Mesa, right, does the American pilot training, but we talked
Goodyear
about.
Airport does one of the large airlines,
Okay.
maybe it's United.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's some things. So pilot instruction requires a lot of space
Mhm.
and a lot of I'm trying to think of what the word is. There's a lot of infrastructure that goes into it that some of our smaller airports up here don't have a lot of. So you look at the facility that, say, Phoenix Deer Valley has, and Phoenix Deer Valley lost their flight training school. It went to Goodyear, and Phoenix Deer Valley is huge and has a lot of infrastructure. They're looking for a place where really they can kind of take over an airport for those large airline-sized flight instructions, you know, where maybe a majority of the aircraft operating out there are going to be part of that flight training school. Our elevation and our winters make that challenging. They tend to like warm desert locations with lots of sunshine.
But we're
There's
so
Embry-Riddle.
close.
Embry-Riddle and Prescott
Embry-Riddle
is
and
close
Prescott.
by, and that's a
Okay.
huge aviation flight school.
Yeah.
If you go down there, 90% are the Embry-Riddle flights.
Yeah, Prescott's a great
planes.
example. So Prescott does have commercial service with United through an essential air service grant. So they have, I think, 50 seat aircraft flying for United that operate twice a day. They get an extra subsidy of several $million a year to keep those there. That was a grant program that existed at a time that Flagstaff wasn't eligible for and has since gone away through congressional changes. But even with that, Prescott, for example, has over 300,000 operations a year. So we talk about our operations being one takeoff or one landing. Flagstaff sits at about 60,000. We're probably not going to climb much. We've never, even as our air traffic has ebbed and flowed, as we've had new airlines come in and out, we've never really moved from that 50 to 60,000 range in operations. Some of that is weather, some of that is space, but Prescott really does a lot of flight training. So there are those opportunities, and I think we're open to the idea of any company who want to come in and operate a new business at the airport, whether it's a flight academy or whether it's a new medevac company. Anybody who has an interesting commercial development at the airport, we have some space for it. Our master plan has some plans for it, but so far we haven't seen a lot of interest from companies like that.
And you see a lot more simulators too, which require a lot of space and money.
And
So
power.
if you don't have, if you don't have the flow, why am I going to build one if I don't have pilots that are going to pay to go through it? There's somebody pay for it.
On an individual level, Wiseman Aviation does offer some flight instruction. So we do have a, not a school, but some flight instruction opportunities at Wiseman Aviation. So for anybody that's local that is looking to get into some flight instruction, that is something that we do have here at the airport, just not in a formal big classroom setting like you might see at some of those bigger facilities.
But if you go to any of the regional airports, like you mentioned, and just sit there for a while, you will see, that has a flight school. Like Embry-Riddle, go to Embry-Riddle and sit at the end of the runway and you'll see 5 dozen Cessnas flying back and forth.
All painted the same color.
Yeah, all out of the school.
Mm-hmm.
And Embry-Riddle has a great scholarship program for ROTC kids that go down there, and then their flight program. Plus they give them tuition and room and board if they bring their scholarships there too. So.
And I think they have 3 runways, which helps get out of that volume.
Yeah.
But then they also deal with the community surrounding the airport and all of that flight traffic. I was able to go down and do a tour about a year ago, and that's something that they struggle with think of the 300,000 operations compared
Noise
to
complaints.
60,000 noise complaints, because it's constantly, next time you're in Prescott, it's constantly just a circle of Embry-Riddle Cessnas coming in and out and landing.
And it's always those housing developments that, they buy a house with a runway and then go, why is there so much noise? In fact, many years ago, we were looking at possibly moving to Phoenix, and there was a company down there building near Luke that wouldn't have open houses other than on weekends, just to avoid they were scaling people saying, oh, there's not much airplane noise.
Look, you can hear it right now.
Yeah. And then on Monday, 17,000 F-16s are flying overhead. And they're like, where did that noise come from?
Great conversation. The next thing to cover, I mentioned it briefly, the National Association of Counties, so it's all counties in the US, they had their fellowship program come up and see issues that are arising all throughout Arizona. So they were down south at the border, they came up here to see the post-wildfire flooding, and then Orville and his team were generous enough to host them in his hangar. It looks really nice, you can see that picture. And what it was that SRP came up from Phoenix with their 2 helicopters, and they took congressional members and their staff up in groups of 4 to go over and look at the Blue Ridge Reservoir and that watershed. So when folks weren't up in the helicopter, they were able to hang out in Orville's hangar, and certainly some of them were peeking over at the other operations and thought that our airport was really cool. And then after they went up, it was early morning with SRP, the majority of them then took the charter bus over and flew out of Flagstaff. So that was great to be able to have them, show them our airport. Certainly they weren't able to take too many monetary goodies, but the stickers went hot. And it was great to just show them what we do at our airport. So Orville's team cleaned up that hangar pretty well, and it looked really nice, and everyone was very gracious and enjoyed the opportunity. Next slide, Missy. Other things on the horizon is Thunder over Flagstaff. That will take place on Saturday, August 26th. That is hosted by the Experimental Aviation Association, the local Flagstaff chapter, and the revenue goes towards sending a selected candidate to the Oshkosh Air Show in Wisconsin. They have submitted their application, and we've put some conditions on it, and so our pros team within the city, which is the Parks and Rec, Open Spaces and Events, is in the process of issuing that permit. And then at this time, we don't have, we have some confirmation, I believe, from the Navy and the Air Force. Marines and Air Force.
Yeah.
And they will be present. And Brian actually attended a meeting yesterday, so he might be able to add a little bit more.
Yeah, they're still finalizing which military aircraft are going to be on display and which private aircraft and old historical military aircraft, things like that, are going to come out. They have a pretty good list right now, but it's all tentative until, you know, the last few weeks before. But they are working on several helicopters from the Marine Corps and potentially some large cargo aircraft from the Air Force. They have a few other irons in the fire that we'll see if they work out as we get a little bit closer to the date, but they're planning on having a full ramp of aircraft similar to what we had last year. One thing of note to anybody who's been before is for a couple years in a row, they had the Route 66 Car Club car show at the same time. Car Club has decided to go a different direction this year, so we'll just be the open house with the aircraft, food trucks, things like that this year. The Car Club kind of like having a little bit more of an open schedule where they can have vehicles come and go during the day, whereas with this one with the single gate for vehicles and pedestrians, they kind of had to arrive by a set time, which is a little challenging for their operations. So
It's all those old guys.
It was a little bit of a safety issue, having them pull in with young, excited children ready to run towards aircraft. So it will be more focused on the aircraft.
What does that do for the airport? I mean, is there anything beneficial for the actual airport for having those guys come in? And
for us, the big thing is just public relations. You know, it's really funded by the EAA that Claire mentioned, so costs for the airport are fairly minimal. It's, you know, our staff time, making sure that we review their application and we're comfortable with what they're doing, plus our operations staff, just making sure that we're keeping an eye on things. But it really is put on by that group. For them, it is, I think Claire might have mentioned, it's funding a scholarship program to send some local kids to certain flight training courses. But yeah, we do get a lot of views for it. We hear a lot of, well, we get feedback just in general, some positive and some negative from the event. It does obviously have a traffic impact and noise with planes flying over, but it also gives a chance for people who might not otherwise be able to come out to the airport or to see airplanes, come see them. So we try to do what we can to make sure that we share what's going on here with the community and that they can kind of get a chance to see what the airport's doing for them.
does that have more impact on Orville than anybody?
Yeah, it impacts Orville's operations for sure, but really the EAA brings a big staff. So we try to encourage them to have enough people on hand to handle everything they can. So for us, it's kind of moving Orville moves this aircraft out of the way. We make sure certain gates are secured and that, you know, people stay within sort of the limits of the event. But yeah, it's a lot of EAA staff and volunteers that are actually running the day-to-day operation.
Okay. Just for you guys to know, if you need any commission volunteers, I would love to come out and do whatever I need to do, you know, help out.
Great, appreciate that.
Because for some reason, I just like airplanes.
Yeah, that's why we're here, right?
And I'll drop a picture in the chat. I thought I had it on Instagram. That's why I pulled it up. But we did have a presence at the event last year, and we will do that again this year. So here's Brian, and then we had some good swag that went fast. That was right when we launched our social media channels and website. So we were able to promote that, and we'll kind of grow from this year. So yes, certainly have a presence at the event.
And that's growing a little bit. We've had some interest from other departments from the city that have seen how the public kind of comes through. So I'm pretty sure it's not finalized yet, but we're hopeful that the Flagstaff Fire Department will also have a similar booth there for some of their recruiting efforts.
Things like everybody's recruiting for everything. Probably have the cops there too, I would think.
We're working on that too, actually.
Yeah.
So hopefully,
And they're still gonna do the free flights for the kids?
Yeah, there's an opportunity to sign up for, I think they call them Young Eagle flights.
Yeah, it's kind of a cool thing. We had my grandson go on a helicopter ride last year. He liked that.
next, a little save the date, put a hold in your calendar. We're in the infancy of planning, but we will be having a 75th anniversary celebration for the Flagstaff Airport. And that date is going to be November 29th from 4 to 5:30. In more details to come, we'll certainly cover a little bit of history, have some momentums. We'd certainly like you to be present, but we will all forward that save the date invitation to you, but we will have more information as that arises, as we get closer, which will be pretty soon. Next slide, Missy. My final thing, a few other things, sorry, is that we were able to do the 4th of July parade. So American approached us with the idea. United had done it last year. Since we're certainly a smaller staff, we invited Wiseman to come out as well, kind of the Flagstaff Airport United front. So we had American employees with their plane that they made, and then we had our airport car, and then we had Wiseman Aviation donated patriotic sunglasses and t-shirts. So those were very hot giveaways at the parade. Next slide, Missy, there's two more pictures, but it was really nice to just get out there. The MC, I think it was 4 points throughout the parade, announced our daily flights. American, best way to get more routes is to fill the seats that we have. So yeah, that was the 4th of July parade, and that was some nice community outreach, and American was pretty jazzed about it and has plans for next year, so we were able to do that. The final thing I wanted to add was we had talked about the tours, and I know that never really happened. So if people are interested in a tour, if you can email me 3 dates that you're available in August, I would be willing to do one-on-one tours. I think we could get that done in like an hour and 15 minutes max, probably an hour if it's just one person. So if you send me 3 dates in August, dates and times that you're available, I'll get with you and we can certainly arrange a one-on-one tour. We'll do the whole, we can do the R station, we can do Wiseman, we can do the new parking area. We can look on the ramp if there's anything else you would like to see, specialty, let me know. We will not go on the runway because I don't drive on the runway, but we can certainly see what's out there. So if you're interested, 3 dates in August would be great, and we can get something on the calendar. If August doesn't work for you, let me know and we can go from there. That is all that I have.
All right, wonderful. I love the pictures, Claire. So thank you for sharing those. I actually do have a few questions for you. So I love seeing, the social media posts, Instagram and Facebook. Do you have any statistics to share with us? I'm just curious how many people we engage and how many people, just some data behind, who's commenting and who's engaging with what's going on at the airport. I know that you had given those stats prior.
So we're I think we're coming up probably this week on our 1-year anniversary with social, because I launched that I think a few months after I started. So certainly it's continuing to grow and it is pretty impressive for 1 year. At the next meeting, Chair Caldwell, we do need to get moving a little bit on our meeting format, and I know Missy wants to keep us on time so everybody gets out of here. But at the next meeting, I'll put together some social stats and share that.
Yeah, that would be great. Wonderful. Are there any updates on the restaurant RFP process?
Yeah, so the restaurant RFP closed
on the 23rd.
The 23rd. So the panel of procurement is assembled to review those is in the process of reviewing them, and we're waiting to hear about the meeting to discuss those. We can't really speak to who sent proposals or how many we received at this point until that process plays out, but we did, that did close, and we are reviewing the proposals at this time.
Awesome. Wonderful. Thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Claire before we move on?
And can you tell us if you got more than one proposal?
I don't think we can until
It's a confidentiality.
it's confidential
waiver. Yeah,
until they're all
this is-
released. So when the scores come out, we can talk in more detail about it,
Sure.
but until they're released, we have to keep that confidential.
Did you have a question? I saw you came off of mute. Nope. Okay. All right, let's move on to informational items, meeting format. Missy Sannert.
All right, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So I wanted to start off this meeting. It's more of an informational meeting versus a discussion meeting. We sat down as airport staff to have kind of a conversation of how we wanted to really work on a few of these items. So actually, oh, it looks like my, sorry, my presentation did not update correctly, but I will try to do this a little bit different. The slides did not come out the way they were supposed to, so I apologize ahead of time. It looks like there are 3 terms that are expiring as of October, and that is David Steiner, Christina Caldwell, and Kyle McCloy. If you guys are wanting to be considered for reelection, we do ask that you submit a new application that you can do through the Flagstaff website on their boards and commissions. That application is held until we have, I believe it's 1 or 2 additional to the seats that are open. So I believe we would need either 4 or 5 applications to vote for those 3 spots. With that being said, the airport staff has decided to keep the hybrid option for the meetings at this time. Once the new seats have been filled with new staff, we will probably have a revote on the hybrid option. Once we have the new staff, we do want to go ahead and, like I said, revisit the hybrid option, make sure that all our new commission members are all in favor of that. In addition, the quorum issue that we were having, we do need to have confirmation of quorum by the Tuesday before the commission meeting. And we do ask that that confirmation be sent in by 12 p.m. To give staff the afternoon to confirm that meeting. If we do not receive quorum by that Tuesday before at noon, the meetings will be canceled. And that is just, so that airport staff is not waiting last minute to see if we will have the correct amount of members join us. Hopefully, we can get everybody to send us their quorum RSVP. In addition to that, airport staff would like to keep track of the amount of people that attend our meetings in person versus virtually. Once we are looking to reevaluate, if commissioners vote to continue the hybrid option in November's meeting, is when we expect to have all of our new commission members on board. We would like to kind of keep track for the following 6 months to see if that hybrid option is being utilized. And we ask that people, come to the airport, join our commissions in person. As part of the airport commission, we would welcome you to come and join us and really participate here at the airport. Depending on kind of how that meeting tracks and how many people we actually get in person versus virtually, Staff may reevaluate 6 months after that. Um, and then another point that I wanted to go through was to ask individual members of the commission to just remind you all that any questions that are asked do have to pertain to the current subject of what is being discussed. I know it's very easy to kind of go off on a tangent or kind of think of a semi-related question to the topic on hand, but unfortunately, those kind of questions are actually prohibited from being discussed by open meeting laws until the item has officially been placed on the agenda. So that is, staff has been kind of continuing those conversations and answering some questions, even though they don't quite fit in with the current topic. So we do just ask that if the additional questions come up, maybe we can pose them and revisit them at a following meeting and make sure that that item is officially placed on the agenda. Are there any questions on these items? As I said, I do apologize. It looks like my slides did not update. So not all the information I really wanted is on there. I believe, Claire, you had taken a look at my slides. So if you have any comments or anything that I missed, please bring that up.
Sorry, Missy, I think we were all hustling to get our slides done today, working off the same thing. When I looked at your slides this morning, this was what it was. And I just wanted to add that if you do have something you'd like to discuss, we can certainly send an email before the agenda is posted to myself, Brian, or Missy, and we can get that added on the agenda if there's certainly something you'd like to discuss. Thanks, Missy.
Missy, Chair Caldwell, could I add one thing to that?
Yes, of course.
Yes, absolutely.
Right, so yeah, just to piggyback on what Missy was saying in relation to our last discussion, I think Chair Caldwell and Vice Chair Jackson brought up a good point that when we were talking about the hybrid meeting issue, really what we were talking about was a quorum issue. So what we've done with this revised rule or revised policy of asking for confirmations by the Tuesday before just gives us a couple of days to make sure we have that quorum as we start assembling these documents and make sure we get the meeting room ready, and for any commissioners that are making travel plans to come out to the airport. So, that's pretty tight to the deadline. We didn't want to bring it much closer to the meeting date and time than that. So we'll see how that Tuesday at noon deadline for quorum works. But I think that'll be a good way to make sure that we still have availability for people to come out to the airport, which we certainly appreciate. And hopefully you can take advantage of some of those tour opportunities in addition to the meetings that Claire mentioned. And that is on top of what Missy talked about with the open meeting law and the commission's reminder or maybe a notification. I'm not sure if you had seen or heard about this, but the city has started posting the recordings of all of the commission meetings from the various commissions across the city on its YouTube channel. So these are publicly available through some of the city resources and will be shared for the record.
Great, thank you. I think this is great. Thank you for continuing the hybrid option.
Chair Caldwell, we might be losing your audio a little bit.
Okay, what about now?
Oh, that's great.
Okay, sorry about that. Yeah, I think this looks great. Thank you for keeping the hybrid option available to commissioners for the meetings. I would request that maybe on Tuesday morning, if we could all get maybe a reminder email that we need to get our confirmations in by noon. I think that would be helpful. So if that's possible, I would request that we do that.
Certainly, Chair Caldwell. So the agenda goes out sometimes Thursday, usually Friday. And I have reached out to folks that do not respond. Certainly, it's a reoccurring appointment that everyone has in their calendar, and I can follow up, but we just want that noon cutoff. So if we're not going to have the meeting, that's fine. But there's certainly times when I ask for end of business on Tuesday, and we'll drop names, but sometimes Thursday morning we still don't hear from folks, and it's that text or that reach out for email. So certainly we value you and your service to the Airport Commission, but we want to have a little bit of ownership and just let us know if you're able to do it. So I will certainly do my best and put a reminder in to send something out on Tuesday if I don't hear from you. But really, if everyone could look ahead on their calendars and just let us know. And if you're not going to be able to make a meeting ahead of time, please you don't have to wait for that email. If you know that you're going to be out of town or unavailable, just let me know. But yes, I'll certainly try to get something out 8 a.m. on Tuesday before the meeting. But again, that does go out Friday as well with the minutes, the agenda, and you're asked to get back to me. And again, it has been that Tuesday end of day, but we are going to move it up to noon so we can certainly make arrangements and cancel the meeting. And we're not always sitting at our computers and things like.
Claire, that would be very helpful. Just a group reminder in the morning on Tuesday. I think that would be helpful to everybody. I know that people work and people have busy schedules. And so, you know, if that's available for you to do Tuesday, that would be greatly appreciated.
If I may make a comment, I think you're adding extra workload to these guys. If you don't read your email on Thursday and are aware of the meeting time and the things that she puts in there, I think it's the commissioners and the members' responsibility, not Claire's responsibility to remind us. So I don't think there's a need for a Tuesday morning second reminder. That's just adding work for these guys.
Noted. Thank you.
And I reach out to the people that haven't responded. So if you have responded, then I take you off the email. But I will certainly make a note to do that. But again, we're not always sitting at our computers. We have meetings and we're out doing things. So we'll certainly do our very best to do that. But thank you.
And Claire, I do appreciate, you know, all of your efforts. And I do know that you make an extra effort to reach out. You've reached out to me. And so that is very much appreciated. So all of your efforts are appreciated. I think that this looks great. And commissioners, if you have any comments or questions for Claire before we adjourn.
One final thing, Chair Caldwell, I am going to not do the texting anymore. So texting is kind of my last resort if I don't hear from you all. So I do ask that we kind of keep it to email. If it's a last minute thing, certainly send me a text. You have an emergency, you're not able to make it. But if we can keep it to email, I can send out that 8 a.m. email, but I'm not going to do the text messages. That's a little too much.
I wasn't aware you were doing text messages, so I would agree that text messages are probably above and beyond. So.
We just want to be able to have a quorum and be able to run our successfully.
And if I could ask one thing, did you send out who's the community members, the committee members, you know, the commissioners and you guys, since we've got some changes?
Yeah, so a list.
Just like names and emails. So
I can do names and emails. We have that. Phone numbers I wouldn't be comfortable with sharing, but names and emails, I actually think they're on the website, but I'll add it to my list and I'll send something out.
If you can.
With people's term limit.
I didn't hear the context of that question. What was
He was asking for a list of email addresses for our commission members and their names, so I can certainly send that out.
And the airport guys.
And all of us.
Yeah.
And we're all on that email too. It goes to everyone, so you can always, don't reply. Actually, no, don't reply all because then that breaks open commission law. So yes, I will send out an email with everyone's contact, with everyone's email.
Sounds good. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair Caldwell.
Yeah, absolutely. So commissioners, are there any questions or comments before we adjourn? All right, hearing none, do I hear a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move that we adjourn. Commissioner Waddell.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second. Commissioner Breckenridge.
Thank you, sir. All those in favor, please unmute and say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. All right, motion carries. Thank you, everyone. Good meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.